It was the same routine every year, the same table, the same faces, the same suffocating air, thick with polite clinks of silverware and forced laughter. We gathered at the Red Elm, a charming countryside restaurant my family liked to pretend was a hidden gem, as if the rustic decor could mask the rot beneath. This time, I knew what was coming. I'd seen it in their eyes the moment I walked in. The head of the table belonged to my mother, Veronica, always perfectly composed, always sharp where it hurt most. She had a way of looking at people that stripped the warmth from your skin, especially if you were me. I took my seat quietly near the end of the table, opposite the fireplace and just beside the window. That was by design. Easier to stare into the dark outside than into the faces pretending not to despise me. Veronica barely waited for the appetizers before starting. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Ethan," she said, cutting into her steak without looking up. "Still trying to figure out what you're doing with your life." A few chuckles followed. Mira gave an awkward smile, eyes darting between me and the tablecloth. Dad, Paul, remained unreadable, sipping his wine like he wasn't even part of this reality. I smiled faintly. Not because I found it funny, but because I'd learned to treat her words like cold wind, unpleasant, but not personal. "It's been a good year," I replied simply. Veronica raised an eyebrow. "Being a schoolteacher counts as a good year now?" she asked, tilting her head just enough to make it theatrical. More laughter. She had rehearsed that line, maybe said it in front of a mirror. I focused on my glass of water, swirling it slowly, let them burn their energy. "You know," she continued, "your cousin Aiden is preparing to take over his father's firm next quarter. Meanwhile, you're still playing Mr. Rogers in the classroom. It wasn't about the job. It never was. It was about the control, the shame game." She threw comparisons like knives and expected me to bleed publicly. Grandma Josie hadn't said a word. She sat at the far end of the table, quiet, but not absent. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze sweeping over everyone like a soft lantern glow. "I suppose we all have our place," Veronica added with a smirk, finishing her wine. "Mine just happens to come with a pension in dental," I said dryly. Mira coughed to hide a laugh. Veronica's eyes sharpened. "That attitude," she said, colder now. "That's why no one takes you seriously, Ethan. You're a disappointment to this family, to your potential, to yourself." There it was. The word she always saved for dessert, disappointment. I didn't respond. I never did. That's how this worked. She aired her disdain. Everyone nodded or stayed silent. I absorbed it. The rest of the table resumed their conversations, safer topics. Weather, investments, someone's third divorce. But Mira's fingers fidgeted beside her wine glass. Her eyes occasionally flicked to me, like she wanted to say something, then didn't. Dad stayed quiet, of course. That was his role, the silent backdrop to Veronica's monologue. I excused myself halfway through the main course, walked outside, stood by the restaurant's wraparound porch. The air was colder than expected. In the silence, I could still hear the low hum of voices inside. I thought about all the years I'd been showing up for this same performance. The meal, the ritual humiliation, the silence that followed me home like a coat I couldn't shake off. But something was different tonight. Not in me, in her, Grandma Josie. When I looked back through the window, I saw her watching Veronica, calm, focused, like someone waiting for just the right moment. That's when I knew maybe tonight wouldn't end the way they planned. Maybe someone else was finally ready to speak. Back inside, the plates had been cleared. Dessert was served. I slid into my chair just in time to hear Mira ask about Aiden's new lake property, the one Veronica had paraded through Instagram stories like it was a family accomplishment. "Oh, it's lovely," Veronica said with a wide smile. "He's a natural leader, that boy. Not afraid of responsibility. Not like some people." A pause, just long enough for everyone to feel where that was aimed. I didn't flinch. I never gave her the reaction she craved. But then something shifted. A sound, light, deliberate, cut through the lull of clinking spoons and murmurs. Grandma Josie cleared her throat. It was subtle, but enough. The entire table turned to her, surprised. She rarely spoke during these gatherings. When she did, it was to compliment the bread or mention the weather, never to interrupt. She rested her teacup down gently, both hands folded neatly in front of her. "That's enough, Veronica," she said. No raised voice, no emotion, just a quiet sentence that hit like thunder. Veronica blinked. Excuse me? I said, Grandma repeated. That's enough. The air changed. Even the servers in the background seemed to pause. Veronica tilted her head, trying to reclaim control with a bemused smile. Mother, I'm not sure what... You know exactly what I mean. Silence. Every eye turned to Josie now. There was no mistaking the intent in her voice. It wasn't about discipline. It was about truth. You've spent years putting Ethan down, she said slowly, eyes locked on Veronica, publicly, privately, as if he's done nothing worth respect. I've let it slide longer than I should. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Mira shifted uncomfortably. Paul looked like he wanted to vanish into the woodwork. I know what you're going to say, Veronica replied, laughing nervously. You're going to defend the poor school teacher. He has a good heart, right? A good attitude. I'm going to defend the man who kept this family standing when you were too blinded by pride to see it, Josie replied. That stopped her. What are you talking about? Veronica asked, voice losing its edge. Grandma Josie leaned forward. You remember 5 years ago when the family estate nearly folded? When the legal dispute over Dad's shares came up? The panic? The meetings? The near sell-off? Veronica's smile dropped an inch. You told everyone you fixed it, told the family you stepped in, took the lead. Do you remember what I asked you that night? Veronica's lips parted, but nothing came out. I asked what documents you filed to save the land. You couldn't answer. A quiet gasp rippled from the far end of the table. That's because you didn't handle it, Josie said, voice as calm as ever. Ethan did. The silence was no longer awkward, it was stunned. Veronica scoffed. He was a child. I was 20, I said quietly. And the only one who read the bylaws, Josie added. The memories stirred in my head. Long nights digging through dusty folders, scanning line after line of legal jargon, my eyes red from reading. And Josie, standing silently at the door, watching but never saying a word. You didn't think it mattered then, she said to Veronica, just like you don't think it matters now. Veronica's face was stiff now. You're exaggerating. I'm not, Josie said, and you know it. Then she turned to Mira. You were there, weren't you? Mira's face was pale. I remember him staying up late. I thought he was just being obsessive. I replied. Obsession is what saved us. Veronica stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. Grandma Josie stood too, slowly, her movement deliberate. If it's ridiculous, you won't mind what's in the envelope. Her hand reached for her purse. She pulled out a sealed white envelope, thick and worn at the edges. She slid it across the table toward me. Open it, she said. My fingers hesitated. Then I tore the flap. Inside were documents, copies of the original filings, notes I had written in the margins, letters from the bank, evidence of what I had done all those years ago, not to be praised, but to prevent collapse. And one final thing, a letter, handwritten by Josie. The first read it silently. If this day ever comes, know that I saw it all. And I kept these papers not to protect you, but to protect the truth. Grandma Josie. The room was dead silent. Veronica's face was pale, her expression unreadable, some twisted hybrid of disbelief and fury. You can't be serious, she whispered. You're taking his side over mine. I'm taking the truth side, Josie said. Paul said nothing. Mira looked like she wanted to cry. I folded the letter, laid it on the table. I didn't feel triumphant, just steady, like the ground had finally stopped shifting beneath me. And for the first time in years, I was standing on something solid. Veronica didn't sit back down. She stood at the head of the table like a conductor who'd lost her orchestra, still clutching control with trembling fingers. But the room had turned. The energy had shifted. You could feel it in the way everyone looked at her now, uncertain where the power really lived. She glanced at Josie, then at me, her mouth drawn tight. This is absurd, she muttered. Old papers. Stories. That doesn't prove anything. It proves everything, Grandma Josie said, calm but firm. And it's only the beginning. Veronica laughed, short and sharp, like glass breaking in the wrong part of the house. You're seriously going to rewrite history now? Pretend like Ethan was the one who held this family together? I didn't pretend anything, I said quietly. I just worked. You were a child, she spat. You don't even understand what you were meddling with. I understood enough to keep us from losing the estate. Her face darkened. This is just like you, playing victim. hiding behind grandma's skirts. You never had the backbone to do anything on your own enough, Mira said suddenly, her voice cracking through the air like a switchblade. Everyone turned. She looked up from her seat, eyes glassy but steady. Stop talking to him like that. Veronica blinked. Mira, this doesn't concern you. It does. It always has, Mira said. You tore him down for years, while the rest of us sat there pretending it wasn't happening. Pretending you were right. There was a long pause. Then, I was just trying to push him to be better, Veronica said. No, Mira replied. You were trying to make him smaller, because you couldn't control who he was becoming. I didn't look at her, but I felt it. The strange warmth of someone stepping into your corner when you thought the arena was empty. Veronica's face flickered. You're siding with him now? I'm siding with the truth. Paul shifted uneasily. For once, his silence wasn't comfortable. It was cowardly. I saw it all over his face. The years of passivity, of turning the volume down and hoping the tension would go away. His hands rested uselessly in his lap, still gripped around his wine glass like it might anchor him to some version of the evening that hadn't already collapsed. Grandma Josie turned to him. Paul. He looked up, startled. Say something. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. When he finally spoke, his voice was thin. I didn't know all of that, what Ethan did. You didn't want to know, I said. He flinched, just barely. Veronica crossed her arms. Don't act like you've been some saint either, Paul. He didn't respond. I knew something was wrong, Mira said, eyes moving between them. When the business didn't fall apart, when Mom suddenly had a plan, I just didn't think. She looked at me. You were up every night for months, weren't you? I nodded once. Veronica scoffed. So what now? We all hold hands and give him a medal? No, I said. You just stop lying. The words weren't loud, but they landed like a gavel. Veronica's mask cracked, her jaw clenched, hands gripping the back of her chair. You have no idea how hard I've worked for this family. I do, Josie said, cutting in. But work built on erasure isn't loyalty. It's theft. A silence stretched across the table. You could hear the fireplace crackle, the silverware resting untouched on fine linen, the quiet unraveling of a hierarchy that had once felt untouchable. And then, Veronica's voice, lower now, less sharp, you always favored him. No, Josie replied. I watched him. That's not the same. Veronica laughed bitterly. So this is it? You all turn on me now? No one's turning on you, Mira said. You're just finally hearing what we've all been thinking. Veronica turned her eyes on me, hard and cold. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said. It just makes me visible. That did it. Her face went stiff, her eyes hollow. She sat back down slowly, like her spine had finally caved under the weight of her own history. Across the table, the documents lay open, forgotten but undeniable. Handwriting, bank letters, scanned forms from years ago, the truth staring back like an old photograph that no one remembered taking. Josie poured herself another cup of tea like we were just returning to normal. Truth has a way of surviving, she said softly. I never meant for it to come out like this, I told her. I know, she said. But it needed to. Paul finally spoke again. What happens now? No one answered. Because that was the real fracture, not just the truth itself, but the emptiness it left behind once the lies collapsed. No one quite knew what came after a story like ours lost its villain and revealed its silence. There's a sound that follows truth when it breaks a room, not a bang, not a scream. Just that slow, suffocating kind of silence where no one knows what to do next. That's where we were. Veronica sat rigid in her chair, hands clenched in her lap, lips pressed tight. The room around her had shifted. She felt it. She wasn't the center anymore, and that terrified her. She tried to gather herself, straightened her spine, but there was no line left to cross that wouldn't lead straight into her own reflection. Mira was the first to move. She stood, walked over to the stack of papers, and flipped through the documents with a kind of reverent disbelief. Scanned signatures, notes in the margins, my handwriting from years ago. Her eyes darted across pages like they were solving a riddle too painful to accept. Why didn't you tell anyone? She asked me. I didn't think it would matter, I said. Not to the people who already decided who I was. Paul let out a breath, the first honest thing he'd done all night. You should have said something. I looked at him. Would you have listened? He didn't answer. He just looked away, back into the folds of his napkin, as if a new crease would spare him the truth. Grandma Josie sat still, her tea cooling beside her. She didn't speak, but her presence was solid. She'd already said what needed to be said. The rest was up to us. I should have known, Mira said, softer now. I saw you with those files. I just thought you were trying to prove something. I said, to myself, because no one else was looking. Across the table, Veronica's voice cracked through the stillness. I gave you everything. A roof, a name, this place at the table. I stared at her, quiet for a moment. You gave me a seat so you could remind me I didn't deserve it. Her eyes flared, but only for a second. Then she looked around, at Mira, at Paul, at Josie, and realized no one was going to jump in. No one was coming to save her story anymore. This was supposed to be a family dinner, she muttered. It still is, Mira said. Just. Finally honest. That stung her more than anything I'd said. Then, to everyone's surprise, Paul spoke again. I remember that year, he said slowly. The estate issue. The lawyers were circling. I asked Veronica what the plan was, and she just waved it off, told me it was handled. He turned toward me, eyes tired. I didn't know you were the one behind it. You didn't ask, I said. Not cruel, just stating fact. He nodded once, accepting that weight without protest. And that's when the dam cracked. I was scared, Mira whispered, surprising all of us. I saw the way she talked to you, to us. I thought, if I stayed quiet, I'd be safe. You weren't wrong, I said. You were safer. That's how control works. Mira looked down, ashamed. Veronica stood again, shakier this time. You think this makes you noble? Hiding away in your books, waiting to spring some dramatic reveal? This wasn't courage. It was calculation. No, Josie said, finally breaking her silence. It was survival. Veronica turned on her. And you're just as guilty. You knew all this time. I did, Josie replied. And I'm not proud of staying quiet, but I kept the records for a reason, because I knew the day would come when you'd push too far. Veronica scoffed. You're all pathetic. No, I said. We're finally done pretending. Her breath caught. For a moment, I saw something crack through her armor, not rage, but something more dangerous, grief. Regret. That deep, nameless sorrow of realizing you might have been wrong for years, and there's no time machine to fix it. I spent my life trying to hold this family together, she said. No, I replied. You spent your life trying to control it. Holding it together would have meant listening, trusting, letting other people matter. I was doing what I thought was right, and you never let yourself consider that someone else might know better, Josie added. Veronica looked at all of us, one by one, and for the first time, there was no speech, no jab, no defense. Just silence. Then she sat back down and cried. No loud sobs, no apologies. Just silent tears running down a face that had never shown vulnerability in public. I didn't move, neither did anyone else. We let her sit in it, because healing doesn't start with comfort, it starts with collapse. Across the table, Mira took a deep breath. I don't want this family to break, she said, but maybe it has to bend first. I nodded. Paul looked at me. Can we start over? It was a strange question. Too late, probably, but maybe not useless. Maybe, I said. But not if we pretend nothing happened. Josie raised her glass. Water, not wine. To the truth, she said. Mira echoed it. To the truth. Even Paul mumbled it. And Veronica, she didn't speak. But she didn't object either. That was something. Not peace, but the start of one. The drive home was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't buzz with leftover tension or rage, but the sort that comes after a storm, where everything is still dripping, but nothing is falling anymore. Mira had offered to ride with me. I told her I needed the space. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Or maybe she was just tired of pretending she didn't. As I steered down the winding road away from the restaurant, my fingers finally unclenched from the wheel. I didn't feel victorious. That wasn't the point. It wasn't about proving anything, not to Veronica, not to Paul, not even to myself. It was about finally being heard without shouting, about no longer holding my breath at family gatherings, about laying the weight down instead of constantly repositioning it. That night, I sat in my apartment with the envelope Grandma Josie had handed me. All those old documents, all the years I thought I was the only one who remembered what happened. I read through each page again, not because I needed to, just to let it exist in the light. I tucked the papers into a drawer. I wasn't planning to use them for anything. I just needed to know I didn't imagine it all. A few days passed before the first message came. Paul, short and stiff, just like his posture at dinner. If you're ever up for it, I'd like to talk. No expectations. Just talk. I didn't reply right away. He had spent years saying nothing. He could wait a little longer for an answer. Then Mira texted, I meant it, about starting fresh. I'm sorry for every time I looked away. That one I answered. Me too. It was the first time in a long while that sorry didn't feel like a weapon, just an offering. And then, late one night, a message came from Veronica. No subject line, no punctuation, just 3 words, I don't know. That was it. I stared at it for a while, didn't respond. What could I say? She didn't need comfort. She needed time. And maybe for the first time, she knew that too. By the end of the week, Josie invited me over for tea. The kind of invitation that was more ceremony than social call. When I arrived, she had already set the table, 2 cups, 1 lemon wedge, the same honey jar I remembered from childhood. We didn't talk about what happened. We talked about nothing at all. The garden, the weather, a pie recipe she found in a church bulletin. It was her way of saying, you don't have to relive it anymore. After we finished, I stood to leave, and she pressed something into my hand, a photo. Old, grainy, taken years ago. Me at the kitchen table, surrounded by files, chin propped on my hand, eyes narrowed at a spreadsheet like it had personally offended me. I laughed. You always did look serious when you were working, she said with a smile. I didn't think anyone noticed. I always noticed. I nodded, folded the photo, kept it in my wallet. Life didn't change overnight. The next family gathering wasn't perfect. Veronica didn't speak much. Paul tried too hard to sound present. Mira watched everyone with the cautious optimism of someone who'd seen too much to be naive, but wanted to believe anyway. But it was quieter, gentler. There were no jabs at my career, no comparisons, no tension masked as polite laughter. No one said it, but we were all tired. And sometimes tired people stop fighting, not because they've made peace, but because they've finally run out of war. It's been 6 months now. I still teach, still walk to school with a coffee in one hand and my lesson notes in the other. My students still call me Mr. M, like I'm a cartoon character instead of someone who once saved a crumbling legacy in silence. I don't tell them any of that. They don't need to know who I used to be for my family. They just need me to show up. And I do, every morning, fully, free. People ask me if things with my family are better. I never know how to answer that. Things aren't better. They're true. And truth, I've found, is better than harmony built on silence. I see Veronica sometimes at small gatherings. She doesn't smile much, but she listens more. That's something. Paul has tried harder, short calls, small talk, the kind of efforts that don't fix anything, but build a bridge one plank at a time. Mira and I? We talk regularly. It's strange to feel like siblings at this age, but we're trying. That counts. And Grandma Josie, she just says she's proud, not in the overblown way, just in that quiet, rooted way that makes you feel like everything heavy was worth carrying. I used to think closure would come with a confrontation, loud, sharp, final, but it didn't. It came in a whisper, a moment, a dinner where someone stood up and said, enough. And that changed everything. Not because it fixed the past, but because it gave me permission to stop dragging it into the future. That's the legacy I claim now. Not land, not titles, not approval, just freedom. The kind that starts small, like a breath held too long, and finally, let's go. And that's more than enough.